I think there's been a massive amount of targeting of the former president. And obviously we see the politics at play of elected district attorneys that are playing politics, like the DA in Manhattan has done, campaigning on the fact that he was going to take this action in the courtroom. So, but a jury is a jury, and in the United States, they have the say here. And so I have confidence in our justice system that at the end of the day, the right thing will be done. And we should have a belief in our justice system and the rule of law here in the United States. I think that's very important that we all uphold that.
Do you not believe then, Congressman, this trial should be taking place?
The DA that brought the charges, that is arguing in the courtroom, is the one that campaigned that he was going to do this. So that's for people to decide for themselves. I was here to talk to you about financial services policy, which I am the chair of the Financial Services Committee here on Capitol Hill. Not everything is a consumer of what happens to the former president. I'm trying to stay focused on policy and get the best results I can for the American people. That's what I'm here to do.
Okay, well, fair enough, Mr. Chairman. Let's talk then about some of that policy. Of course, you have, during your tenure as the chair of the Financial Services Committee, been an advocate for crypto-related legislation, successfully earlier this month passing the FIT21 Act, which, of course, is the market structure bill, delineates authority between the CFTC and the SEC. It passed by a wide bipartisan majority in the House. What, though, are you hearing from your counterparts in the Senate about its fate in the other chamber?
Well, the first thing I've heard from my Senate colleagues on the Democrat and Republican side was they were shocked at the wide margin that we passed this bill in the House. FIT21 is a legal structure for the trading and ownership of digital assets. It gives regulatory form to something that currently has no regulatory form. It provides consumer protection and the ability to get investment capital flowing towards innovation. It's the first of its kind of legislation here in the United States. So for us to pass that important bill, FIT21, with a 2/3 vote of the House of Representatives in these divided times, it is a major statement. With 71 of my Democrat colleagues voting with Republicans, it is a major statement that we're here to make serious policy, and we want to have a regulated form of digital assets and cryptocurrency here in the United States.
With that said, Mr. Chairman, we spent some time with Congressman French Hill here on Friday, who implied that the momentum that was gathered in the House in passing FIT21 with a wider margin, to your point, than many predicted was maybe in itself enough to unlock more votes in the Senate. Are you in touch with Chuck Schumer? Do you have a sense of whether this can, in fact, clear the other chamber?
Well, the Senate is in recess this week, so when we get back next week, I'll have greater clarity on that. But the first statement we wanted to have was that, number one, we have serious policy. The second piece of that is a wide vote total. So we have serious policy with a wide vote total. French Hill, being the leading architect of our work in the Financial Services Committee on this important bill, he stated clearly what I believe, which is the momentum is built off that vote total. And the Senate should take this should be a wake-up call for the Senate that they need to get on with this. They need to stay focused on getting policy here and get it done before the election. I think that's a clear statement of this wide vote in the House of Representatives.
Well, it wasn't that far long ago, Congressman, that the conversation we were having about policy related to crypto that may be able to work its way through the Senate was stablecoin legislation, that potentially it could be tied together with other priorities for some, like the Safe Banking Act, which of course would provide marijuana companies access to the U.S. banking system. Where is progress on that in the House? What is the tenor of your conversations in that regard with Maxine Waters right now?
Well, I'm not in favor of the cannabis banking legislation that's been put forth. I voted against it the last two Congresses. It's not a priority for me to move that legislation. But stablecoin legislation is a priority, and I've been negotiating with Ranking Member Maxine Waters on stablecoin policy for the last 23 months. And we want to be able to move policy, but unless we can get a Senate vehicle from the move stablecoins, there is no closing date for our negotiations. We need a closing date, we need a vehicle, and we need an opportunity to get that enacted into law. Unfortunately, the Senate and the Senate schedule is the focus of that bill. We hope that I hope that this market structure bill that we passed, though Maxine Waters didn't support it, that 71 Democrats voting with Republicans is a major statement. We can move that, and hopefully we can get stablecoins prioritized as well.
Is there another vehicle in the rest of this Congress, Mr. Chairman? Is it possible that stablecoin could move as a standalone bill, or you need a bigger vehicle to get this across the finish line?
Well, Joe, I actually think we need a bigger vehicle. What we have not seen in the Senate is for them to take a standalone financial services or financial services bill across the Senate floor since Senate Bill 2155. What we need here is the majority leader in the Senate to prioritize this policy, either market structure or stable coins, to get it through the Senate. And until that time, we're just going to create the atmosphere and the pressure in the best way we can to get them to prioritize this and put it on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, the clock is ticking as this is an election year, Mr. Chairman, and it's a year in which you are not seeking re-election yourself, as you will be retiring at the end of your term. Other than this crypto legislation, which, of course, we've spoken at length about and know you have been advocating for so strongly, what else would you like to see accomplished before your time in the House ends?
Well, my three priorities for my chairmanship of the House Financial Services Committee have been and remain data privacy, to ensure that people's financial data is protected in a world-class way. And that means we have to update existing laws that were created before the advent of the consumer internet. That's number one. Number two, capital formation. We have a package of bills led by Congresswoman Ann Wagner that have moved through the House of Representatives. Much of those bills have been bipartisan. And I want the Senate to prioritize capital formation. Third and finally is crypto. And there are two components to that: the market structure bill that we passed with wide support, and the stablecoin legislation that we mentioned before. So that's my package. That's what I'm focused on for financial policy. Last year got a little complicated for us to move those bills through the House because of my involvement in negotiating in the debt ceiling. And then what happened in the fall of last year with a motion to vacate and me serving as Speaker Pro Tem for a period of time. So the House and the calendar got kind of complicated last year, unfortunately. And so this has tipped over to an election year where it's much more difficult to get policymakers to actually be policymakers and focus on policy, not politics.
Mm-hmm. As we spend time with Congressman Patrick McHenry on Bloomberg TV and radio, you just said a lot, Congressman. You have a unique perspective on the House of Representatives, having held the gavel for some time during this process, not to mention your chairmanship. And as you look ahead to the lame duck session, I'm wondering if it's then or if it's maybe sooner that you see the chance for a supplemental request to help pay for the bridge in Baltimore that collapsed when it was struck by that cargo ship. Is that something this Congress will be able to do?
Well, seeing as the last Congress was the biggest spending Congress we've ever had in America, and considering we have record deficits, I think what we're looking for here on Capitol Hill is a willingness to pare down spending in order to pay for that bridge disaster. I do think it's important that our infrastructure be cared for, but we can't just simply keep spending money we do not have. And with a massive set of spending that this administration has put forward that has been the fuel for inflation, I think it's important that we pare down spending, and I think that will be a reasonable trade for us to get funding for the bridge in Baltimore.
All right. Well, Congressman, I want to return to what you were just speaking about a few moments ago, the idea that it has been a little bit hard to actually get the work of policymaking done because you yourself had to serve as the speaker temporarily for a period of time after Kevin McCarthy was ousted. We have seen actual members of the House of Representatives be kicked out of the body. There has been a lot of chaos in this Congress in particular, maybe so much so that you yourself would not like to return in 2025. When we consider the prospects of Republicans keeping the House majority, given everything we have seen, is it really deserved?
Well, that's for the American people to decide. This has been a chaotic time in the body politic of America. That is true. And my leaving has nothing to do with the chaos at this place. The ebb and flow of Washington is a distinct beast in and of itself. And it has tidal waves and tidal functions just like the great oceans of the world. Some predictable, some unpredictable. But it is a place where you can still get things done. I will commend Speaker Johnson for taking action. We had a 2/3 vote on the supplemental appropriations bill to fund our warfighters overseas and our allies overseas. We had a 2/3 vote to reauthorize FISA. We had a 2/3 vote in the House of Representatives to fund our government at the fiscal responsibility, the debt ceiling level. And we had a 2/3 vote to raise the debt ceiling and pare down spending over the next decade, with the largest deficit reduction bill with the Fiscal Responsibility Act's passage in May of last year, about this time. So big things have still been able to happen under Speaker McCarthy, under Speaker Johnson, and that is still possible, even in the midst of crazy politics, the American people undecided about which direction they want to go, whether they want to go to the left or to the right, and these flip-flopping power structures here in Washington that made things even more chaotic. And so I think when we talk about this stuff, we have to look in the broader context of where we are and where the American people are, not just a narrow view of how chaotic the day-to-day of Washington is. And it is chaotic, as it always has been.